Okay, so I guess we're gonna start.
Yeah, that's good.
Woohoo! Okay.
Can someone just make sure that they can see me on the video? I'll edit this
You
part
should
out.
be fine there because it was on the whole board, so.
Yeah, except the words are on your face. You fine there, yep.
Okay, all right.
I wouldn't move any more left than that though, or any more, don't move this way
To
and
the
that.
right, okay.
But you're perfect right there.
Okay, I'll edit it out. Okay, well, thank you very much for coming and welcome to my defense for my dissertation. I've worked the last year and a half on researching ADHD in adults, and I found that there is a lack of research when it comes to the stigma, discrimination, and efficacy of professors. So I'd like to present to you my dissertation defense. The title of the defense is Efficacy of, gotta edit that out. Efficacy of professors toward adult students with attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and I currently am a doctoral candidate at Concordia University in Portland, Oregon. Next. Thank you. Uh-oh. Technical difficulties.
It's just left click, right? Or right click?
That's okay. So for the last year and a half, I've been working with Dr. Rabbis, who is my faculty chair for my dissertation. I want to say thank you very much for all the work that she's done and put into it, because writing a dissertation, especially when you're an adult with both dyslexia and ADHD, is very, very difficult. So she has had time and patience to help me understand where I need to be and help me edit the paper as much as I need to, because spelling is not my strong suit. I also like to thank David Alba, Dr. David Alba, who is a content specialist for this dissertation, who has helped me bridge the gap that I needed to and present the information where I need to add on to for future research. And then again, to thank Dr. Peggy Dupay, who's my content reader, who's given me very positive feedback. I appreciate that. And myself, I'm the doctoral candidate. So I'm going to give you a brief outline of how this presentation is going to go and flow. The first thing I'll talk about is the problem statement as to why I'm going to be doing this research, the purpose of the study. I'm going to present some research literature that's already out there, my conceptual framework, which guides the dissertation by Bandera. I'm going to talk about the methodology that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using a quantitative method study, the research questions that I'll be utilizing, the target population that I'll be presenting and researching. I will also present the survey, and I will give you an outline of the demographic survey that I'm going to be using, and also the survey that has been published by Viermeyer et al., who are a group of researchers from the Netherlands. And then last, I'm going to talk about how I'm going to collect that data, and then limitations and delimitations within the research. And last but not least, there's going to be an opportunity for questions. So, problem statement. So examining what relationships might exist and how they influence efficacy levels. So the research is based on a causal comparative research method. What I'm looking at is two different groups. I'm looking at educators versus non-educators. I'm also looking at individuals who have a specialization in disability services, disability awareness, ADHD, and special education versus those who have not. With looking at the research that's already available out there, there is a very big gap when it comes to adult ADHD. Historically, adult ADHD was not a diagnosis that was available at the DSM until 2013 with the newest edition. Previous to that, it was only a diagnosis made in adolescents and children. And previous to that, it was only a diagnosis that was made only in males, not female students. So research is now showing through various surveys that are done through the CDC that we're seeing a huge rise within students that are coming up into higher education with ADHD. So the problem statement that I'm looking at is, what do we do for higher education? Professors, academic discipline types, So looking at professors who teach in education programs versus those who do not teach in education programs. For instance, your sciences, your math, your businesses, they may not have an educational background, so I want to compare the two groups. And then coursework in ADHD or special education taken or not taken, so therefore majority of your education programs probably do have a background in it, but some of your professors in higher education may not have a background in education. They may only have a degree in their specific discipline and therefore may not have that coursework or professional development behind to teach other students, especially those with disabilities such as ADHD. So I'm going to support this with some of the literature that's behind this. Available literature focuses on primary and secondary education settings. So therefore, you're looking at K through 12 and possibly transition is where a lot of that research is. It is not allocated whether the information gained in these studies applies to higher education setting because we haven't gotten to that point yet. There's only been a few studies. There's one done by Vance and Wendat in 2008 where they looked at efficacy of professors, they looked at the stigma and perceptions of professors, and they annotated that more research needs to be done. However, there's this big gap where information and research wasn't done within the United States. Research has shown professors in higher education institutions may not be fully knowledgeable with regards to the laws and regulations to Americans with Disabilities Act. Stevens et al. Did a research down in Pennsylvania where they surveyed college professors at a private institution in Pennsylvania, and they found that 11.6% of professors within that institution felt that students who received accommodations received an unfair advantage than those who did not receive accommodations. So even with that note, that percentage, there's still a small percentage to medium percentage of people who feel that accommodations, modifications to education should not exist, therefore presenting the need for more research because we need to find out why that is so. And Becker and Palladino agreed that the way in which faculty members treat adult students with disabilities with regards to accommodations could help or hinder the true meanings of law. So if you take a professor who accommodates a student versus a student who receives no accommodations from a professor, what are the odds? Are they going to do better with accommodations or without accommodations? It's very student-centered. But again, when you're talking about my conceptual framework, which I'll present in the next slide work, shows that we base our choices and our experiences based on our previous experiences. So what have we gone through? What will help the other student? Research have cited reports from students who have had negative experiences with their professors in higher education. So Valerian and al. Did a comparative study where they looked at students with ADHD and also autism within the college setting. And they had interviewed these students to see where their experiences lie within the educational system. And they found multiple attempts where a student felt that they were discriminated against. A student had stated that had ADHD that they were an honors student. They were in an honors program, therefore they had to do a little bit of extra work to get that honors accreditation. And the professor in that, or the advisor, I should say, in that program had said that, why do you need accommodations? You're supposed to be an honors student. You shouldn't need these things. You're supposed to work up to their level. And they felt that that was discrimination because they felt that the accommodations should be available to them. Further, another student in that study had taken a course and had found that the professor belittled them right in front of class because they had asked to go to another room to take a test. And in front of the entire class said, no, you can't do that. I don't believe in accommodations. Therefore, that student didn't return to school. Therefore, the student also dropped out of school. That's not fair. Students reported faculty members were not approachable, non-accommodating, and belittling towards students with disabilities. So this was found in not just Becker and Palladino and Valerian and all, but this is kind of across the board that I found within the research that I looked at. So why am I studying efficacy? I think it's very important to understand the difference between efficacy and stigma. Really, there isn't a difference. When you hear the word stigma, we think negative. When we hear the word efficacy, we think positive. So I want to make sure that I highlight not only the negative aspects of professors' perceptions, opinions, and knowledge, but also the positive, to go back and forth. So the levels of stigma students with disabilities encounter can impact their experiences in higher education, including experiences with faculty members, including perceptions of others and themselves, educational backgrounds, and the willingness to pursue accommodations within the classroom. Research has found that students who have ADHD are less likely to go to student services to request accommodations because of stigma that they have felt in the past from other professors. So I'm going to present to you the conceptual framework that's based on this story, on this research and why I'm doing it. It is through personal experience and knowledge of the relevant research that higher education instructors and administrators can better understand and serve college students with inattentive and hyperactive disorders. I can edit this out, it's okay. It's right there next to the projector.
Here's the principal lead. Keep going.
Here. So the two formal theories that I'm using are both Bandera theories. The first one is self-efficacy theory, and the second one is social cognitive theory. So self-efficacy theory looks at the person, the self-efficacy of their person, and where they might come with their efficacy levels. So Bandera has studied this over multiple years, over 30 plus years. And his theory states that people base their perceptions and their knowledge on past experiences, on past exposure. So if someone has not been exposed to something, their perception and knowledge might be a little bit different than compared to those who have been exposed to that. So by looking at self-efficacy, you're also looking at the efficacy levels of professors. And then the social cognitive theory, you're looking at social skills, how they're relating to other individuals. So with this theory, it assumes that every human has competence. Therefore, it also defines someone's performance level depends on their level of efficacy. Self-doubt equals poor outcomes. So if someone has a bad experience with someone with ADHD, we might assume that their self-efficacy might be also hindered because of that. Bandera also concluded that when a person has higher level of self-efficacy, the goals they set for themselves are also higher. Those who believe in themselves set higher goals. Conversely, individuals who create doubt with regards to the capabilities also have a lower execution of their goals. So therefore, again, negative equals negative, a positive equals a positive. And then here's just a model to kind of define how all of this works together. So someone's behavior relates to the environmental factors. So therefore, what are environmental factors? What they're exposed to versus personal factors, what their personal beliefs are. Everyone comes up with a personal belief. My personal belief would be different than your personal belief, and my environmental factors would be different than your environmental factors. So all of this together kind of creates a chain where behavior versus environmental, personal, and goes kind of around in both directions. All right, so therefore I presented some of the background knowledge in the review. I'm going to look at the methodology. So I'm looking at, I need to fix this. It's causal comparative. So that's, can you make a note? It's causal comparative. I have to fix that before I fully defend it. There was a last minute change last week in the study design. And I'm going to be collecting quantitative data set. So therefore, when we're looking at the difference between quantity and quality, I'm looking at numbers, I'm looking at statistics, I'm not looking for interviews, whatnot, I'm looking to get hard evidence based on the efficacy levels of professors. And then I'm going to be using and explaining a modified instrument of measurement of stigma towards adults with ADHD by Firma et al. I've modified this instrument to fit the population of the United States. So here's one of the research questions, and it states, what, if any, relationship exists between professors who have undertaken training in ADHD, disability awareness, and special education, and those who have not in regards to professor efficacy towards adult students with ADHD? Then when you're looking at it, you're looking at two different outcomes. The first outcome could be there is no statistically significant relationship between professors who have undertaken training in ADHD, disability awareness, and special education, and those who have not in regards to professor efficacy towards students with ADHD. Then you're also looking at a different outcome. There is statistically significant relationship between professors who have undertaken training in ADHD, disability awareness, and special education, and those who have not in regards to professor efficacy towards adult students with ADHD. And the second question is, what, if any, relationship exists between professor teaching and education programs and non-educators in regards to level of efficacy towards adult students? So then you're comparing professors who teach in education programs to those who do not teach in education programs. And then you're looking at the null and the hypothesis, where it says there is no significant statistics or there is statistics that is significant to it. So the target population is professors who are over the age of 18, who teach coursework in college or university within the United States, who are adjunct, full-time, or tenured position within a college. Administrators and other faculty members are eligible as long as they are teaching at least one course with higher education students. The sample size is coming from 3 universities in Massachusetts, 1 university in Oregon, and 1 university in Texas. This is privileged information. Please don't repeat this outside of this room. I had to go through an IRB process. The IRB process had stated that I have to make sure that my study is ethical when it comes to the population that I'm using. So therefore, not only did I have to go through the IRB process with my own university, with my own chair, with the education board, I also had to go through the IRB process with multiple colleges. So this was a very time consuming. So the IRB has already approved and gave me an exempt status, which means that I am not using a population that's at all in jeopardy of being harmed in whatsoever, because I'm using professors who are over the age of 18 who teach in a college. This is exempt status. The colleges that I'm going to be collecting data from, I've also done the IRB process with, is Westfield State University to get the education perspective, Purdue Community College to get a little bit of both, Western New England University, Concordia University, and one other college, because this is the slideshow talking about where I've gotten authorization. I have one other college, the one in Texas, where I'm still working with the IRB process to get approved for me to use their participants. One of the challenges was the fact that some colleges do not want to give out their email list of professors. So I would have to go through multiple processes in which I have to ask them to send a letter or an email to invite them to do it. So it's been a very much time-consuming process. So if I am not able to obtain authorization before or after my defense, and when I'm finally able to collect data, the Texas site may not be part of the study anymore. All right, so this is my variable data set. So I'm looking at dependent variable and independent variable. So the first is my dependent variable, which is stigma. I'm going to be using that Fiermeyer study that has been published, found to be internal, reliable, and validity through the Europe. It's an ordinal set, means it has a Likert scale where it's 6 different things: always, not always, disagree, agree. However, later on in the presentation, you will find that I'm modifying that instrument to 1, make sure that's internally consistent within the United States population, 2, to go from a 6 Likert scale point view to a 4 Likert scale point view, and then also to create reliability. And then my first research question looks at academic discipline. So I'm looking at education versus non-education. And how that's gonna be collected is through a demographic questionnaire that specifically asks, do you teach an education program or do you not teach an education program? It's a dichotomous variable, meaning that there's two answers to that survey question, there's no others. The second is training type. So for instance, do you have training in special education, ADHD, disability, versus those who do not? And it's gonna be collected through the demographic survey. It's dichotomous, meaning there's two answers to that, and they're gonna be put into that group. There is a third survey question that I'm gonna be utilizing where it's going to collect descriptive data to see what program that person's from. Because it's not a comparative, I'm not going to be comparing those, it's just going to create a percentage in that program. So for instance, education, science, math, business, health, they're gonna be able to select that choice, and there's 6 choices in that, so it's multinomial. So the original instrument was a demographic questionnaire created by Fiermeyer, which I have permission to not use. I don't have to use this. Fiermeyer has only stated that I can use their stigma survey as such with the verbiage. I have been given permission to change it from a 6-point scale to a 4-point scale. The survey is completed using the Likert type scale, so this is the original, where it says strongly disagree, disagree, somewhat agree, agree, and strongly agree. Based on research in Likert scales, 6-point is too many choices for some people, so therefore I might not be able to obtain reliable data from it. And specifically, since I'm going from population in Germany to population in the United States, I need to revalue the internal consistency. So therefore, the original instrument was conformed using a CFA, completed to find 90% confidence level in the survey, which is great, because typically Cronbach has said that you need only an 80% reliability. So therefore, we know that this instrument with the population of Germany is reliable, and therefore we can assume that this instrument may be reliable for the United States, but have to redo internal consistency. The root mean squared error of approximation averages 0.6, where the average is somewhere between 0.57 and 0.64. So therefore, because it falls within that, we know that it's reliable. The upper limit of the confidence is less than 0.8%. Comparative fit index is between 0.9 and 0.95, which is calculated interval between 9 and 3. What you're doing is you're taking those two numbers, combining them, and getting the average. And therefore, because it fits above 0.90, it's reliable. Consistency was measured by using Cronbach's alpha method with an alpha of 0.91. Reported maneuver, which is a statistical analysis to look at multiple variables, multiple nomials, and a post hoc pairwise comparison with an effect size of 37, negligible effects of 0.20, small effects of 0.20, medium effects of 0.50. So what does this mean? Is it looks at the 3 different points, small, medium, and large, to make sure it's consistent. So it wasn't just rated on one consistent level, it was rated on multiple levels. And I'm sorry, this part is very dry. So again, let's talk about the limitations. Fiermeyer et al. Ran internal consistency and reliability using a German population. So what this means is that he looked, or the group of researchers looked at German school teachers, and they ran that compared to a group of comparables where they have degrees. But they work as anything. There's not that comparison. They could be lawyers, they could be professors as well, just to get that reliability score. And they tested over 1,000 people to get that internal consistency. But we also have to understand that Germany has different special education laws. They look at special education a lot differently than we do. The United States has the American Disabilities Act, whereas Germany has similar laws with Europeans, however, still different. And also, culture is very different in Germany versus the United States. The population studied within this research is professors who live within the United States. Therefore, internal consistency and reliability has to be done and recalculated to reflect the above mentioned limitations. I have to make sure that this instrument is still good to use within the United States. So let's look at how I modified it. Modifying the instrument is this. I'm going from a 6-point scale to a 4-point scale, where I'm only going to say strongly agree, disagree, and strongly disagree. Modifying the Likert scale to a 4-point scale to avoid mutual responses, because if you go from 6 down to 4, you get a better response rate. And Fiermeyer did say when they published the instrument that it was just a beta version of it, that it could be somehow modified to fit the needs. So this slide showing how I'm going to recalculate the internal consistency. Considering the limitations of the original instrument, internal consistency and reliability would be recalculated using Cronbach's alpha of 0.91. Also to ensure validity and the modified of the 4-point Likert scale, because again, we're going from a 6 to a 4-point. The same data will be used to both recalculate internal consistency and reliability to help provide data-driven responses to research questions, hypotheses, and my null hypothesis. So limitations to this survey is that survey invitations is going to be sent to a group via email. I'm not going to be seeing people face to face. I'm not going to have any control over the people who take the survey. Between all of the universities, therefore, I have about a 3,000 participant base, where I'm only going to expect about 300 people, if that, to take the survey. So how I'm going to delineate this research is that currently, if all goes well with IRB, I'm going to look at 3 distinct geographical locations: Massachusetts, Texas, and Oregon. Now, I'm not going to distinctify them within the research. I'm not going to say this group is from Oregon, this group is from Massachusetts, this group is from Texas. They're going to be together, so I can get a outcome of the United States in whole. So therefore, I picked Massachusetts because it's on the East Coast. I picked Texas because it's kind of in the middle, in the South. And then Oregon, I picked because it's on the other side of the United States, therefore to get more of a geographical premise. Any questions? I'm sorry, it's very, very dull. Yes?
What have been the significant contributions of your research?
So significant contributions would be that I'm collecting more research and more data that could be driven towards helping students that are going to college with disabilities. With the higher level of students going, or the increase of students with disabilities attending college now, more research is said that needs to be done in the field.
Thank you.
So, do you have a plan of action if you do not get about 300 participants?
So when I did the G-Power analysis, only stated that I needed 91 people to participate in the study.
Okay.
So if I do not even get 91 people to participate in the study, I will therefore rethink my IRB plans and ask for a modification or amendment to that IRB plan to then maybe collect data at a different location or different place.
How could you improve your work?
I give the questions. Improving my work would mean to look at additional data sets. So for instance, then verifying the geographic locations, looking at Massachusetts versus Oregon versus Texas, but also including different geographical locations. I didn't decide to do that within the study because it's a doctoral dissertation. Therefore, I'm only trying to collect a small amount of data to then therefore approve later on. If I were to do this again, probably not ever. I would look at that, but I also would look at the experiences professors have and try to figure out a survey that would be comparable, possibly even a mixed method where I look at quantitative and qualitative studies to look at both factors, to look at experiences.
So when you chose the original study through Germany, why did you go with that one versus anything else?
So the original study in Germany is the only one of its kind. Scrudio is a well-renowned ADHD specialist in the United States, and he is based in Pennsylvania. He has created what's called ASCAP. The ASCAT only looks at perceptions of teachers in elementary school and secondary school. It does not look at professors. When I reached out to Scrutio and tried to modify his tool, I would have to do a great deal of modifications because his tool was created in 2000. And therefore, we've already had 2 additions and revisions to the DSM. And the DSM has made many, many changes to how ADHD is diagnosed, and it also includes the adult population. Therefore, finding an instrument was very, very hard. It actually took about 6 months for me to find a reliable instrument that I really knew tested what it was supposed to. Furemeyer's instrument, and he stated this, and they stated this as a group in their research multiple times, that his is the only instrument out there that tests and looks at adult ADHD, because adult ADHD is a newer diagnosis.
So I know a lot of the factors that play into your research, you're looking at, a lot of the data is for primary and secondary schools. A lot of the professors do not have education backgrounds. They are just specialized in their subject and they're teaching it to students. And do you think the fact that, adult ADHD is a newer diagnosis, but there's also some people who, like my generation, ADHD wasn't something that was diagnosed when I was in school. So you're also looking at a bunch of people who it would be new just for that individual. So would that play into it at all in terms of the individual themselves aren't even familiar with accommodations?
Yes, that will actually show within the scale. The way that the questions are written, there's 37 questions. It looks at 6 subscales. The 6 subscales looks at perception and knowledge of ADHD. So they're looking at medication use. They're looking at behaviors of someone with ADHD. They ask direct questions to see if you actually know the answer. Do you agree with this? Do you disagree with this? And kind of it frames it that way. So yes, the instrument will look at that as general. But because I'm doing a causal comparative, I'm not looking at the person itself. I'm looking at the group of individuals as itself. That would require an additional data set and probably require more participants because of it probably being a maneuver research, statistical research.
So you talked about how you're going to take this German study and you're going to adapt it to the use in the United States. So my question is, what is their perception of adult education major, adult college students with disabilities, specifically ADHD, versus what we're seeing in the United States here?
So it's very similar when it comes to the perceptions. There is a group of individuals who agree that accommodations and modifications should happen in higher education. There's countries where they feel that ADHD does not exist. And then the United States has a population, which we found with Stevens et al.'s research, where there's a large amount of professors who agree with accommodations to the point of ADA standards, not to go above and beyond to help that student. Because we're also considering this, ADA only says that students are entitled either Title II or Title III for accommodations within college. Once you leave secondary school, if you have an IEP, that IEP now has to translate to a 504 plan. Therefore, it doesn't give you modifications within the curriculum, it only gives you accommodations. And also because of colleges either being privately funded or federally funded, that also plays a big role. If the college is fully federally funded, then they have to agree to a certain accommodations there for a note taker or books on audio. Bookshare would be one of them, a separate testing room. So you're looking at accommodating the individual. When it comes to private schools that receive a little bit of funding with the federal government, they still have to accommodate, but they don't have to do as much accommodations as a fully federal college has to.
So with this consideration, what are the 4 to 5 colleges that you're choosing? Are they would they have to fully accommodate a 504 or partial?
So Westfield State University, again, this is privileged information, doesn't go past here. Westfield State University is a fully federal university. Western New England is partially federal funded university. Concordia is a private Christian-based school, but does receive federal funds, but therefore it's in a Title III, so the accommodations are limited versus a regular. And in Texas is also another Concordia University, so it's limited. So I have a variety of both federal and limited.
In Holyoke?
And Holyoke Community, I'm sorry,
Community as
thank you,
well.
is federally funded.
Yeah. Great, thank you.
I feel stupid. You
No,
ever
please
do-
don't.
No,
No, I feel like
I don't feel
I was
qualified
boring
to
you
ask
guys
questions
because I
because
love
I'm
math.